Hello, this is Calabash from Cultiers, and I am here today to do an overview and explanation for the Necroblight rotation, which has seen more than a little bit of use throughout the Warlords of Draenor expansion, and through, as of right now, is the current Death Knight primary AoE spec for patch 6.2, Fury of the Hellfire. In a nutshell, the Necroblight rotation revolves around the use of the ability Necrotic Plague and Unholy Blight and/or Plague Leech to allow the Death Knight to put up Necrotic Plague, stack it high, and spread it around a bunch of targets. It is the spiritual successor to a rotation that used to be called Festerblight, which consisted of using Unholy Blight to put up diseases at the start of a fight, allowing the trinket Fabled Feather of Jikun, this is a Pandaria rotation, the Fabled Feather of Jikun to stack up to its maximum stacks, and then refreshing diseases with Outbreak, preferably with a snapshot of the most powerful trinkets that you could acquire at the time. Right now, the way that Death Knight diseases work is that there is no snapshotting. The diseases are dynamically and constantly updated based on what your character stat sheet values are. Crit, mastery, haste, and strength. Everything. As such, there are a few talents involved in the Necroblight rotation, aside from Unholy Blight and Necrotic Plague, which were the primary ones. You will be using Festering Strike to extend diseases. You will be using Scourge Strike occasionally for burst. You will be using Blood Boil for any AoE situation, and when you have diseases not up on 2 or more people, any time that you can hit 3 people, you will substitute Blood Boil instead of Scourge Strike in your burst. As always, you'll use Summon Gargoyle, Anti-Magic Shell for rune regen, Blood Tap for regenning for regenning runes, and also because if you're careful, you can convert all 6 of your runes into death runes. Other than that, that's pretty much all the class talents that are directly involved in this. The gear requirements for Festerblight are not necessarily as stringent as, Necroblight are much less stringent than Festerblight were. Right now, you can pretty much use any trinket combination for it and still succeed in a situation where Necroblight would be very effective, but you're more likely to see a benefit from using some combination of Discordant Chorus, Unending Hunger, and the class trinket Reaper's Harvest. In a situation where you've got multiple adds that are stacked together, you're probably going to want to use Discordant Chorus. In a situation where you've got adds that are spread all around and you're not going to be able to hit all of them with the cleave, you're generally going to want to be using Unending Hunger, as are you going to be wanting to use Unending Hunger in any sort of situation where you're going to be potentially doing single target damage during any significant portion of it. Because, quite simply, Unending Hunger is one of the strongest trinkets currently in the game as of patch 6.2. I have, on occasion, also used a combination of Unending Hunger and Vial of Convulsive Shadows to do freaky deaky burst Necroblast AoE. This could easily substitute any sort of strong burst trinket in situations like Cormorant Mythic, where you've got a large amount of adds that are being placed onto the playing field at any given time and disappearing relatively quickly. You're going to want to maximize your burst output, and for that you basically need a burst trinket. It's really a niche use, and honestly it's debatable as to whether or not it would be more useful, whether Reaper's Harvest would be more useful in that kind of situation. But if your raid's burst is really good, you're going to end up wanting to use a burst trinket. That said, the only other thing that you really need to be concerned about for Necroblight rotation is that you're going to prioritize multi-strike and mastery. Depending on your gear level, multi-strike is almost invariably going to be ahead, and strength is going to be ahead of multi-strike. But as always, I encourage you to sim yourself out and find out where your priorities stick. The techniques used for the Necroblight rotation can be generally boiled down to one of 6 categories, really. Either your opening rotation, you're maintaining your disease stacks, your burst, refreshing, converting all your your runes to death runes. The 6th is really kind of borderline situations where you'd use some really strange burst, but I'm just going to call it 5: opening, maintaining, bursting, refreshing, and converting all your death runes. Your burst is going to either use Scourge Strike or Blood Boil. As far as your opener goes, you're generally going to want to use your standard DK opener of Army 6 seconds before the pull, Summon Gargoyle going in, but instead of opening up with Outbreak, you're generally going to want to open up with Unholy Blight if you are anywhere near melee range. In other words, if you are within 10 yards of the boss after your global cooldown for Summon Gargoyle has come up, you're going to want to use Unholy Blight, and then you're going to want to Festering Strike, Scourge Strike to get your first set of runes. If you're not terribly familiar with how DK runes regen, it is in 3 sets of 2 runes. Using the first rune will cause the entire set to start to regen. The runes regen as a set, not individually, as was the case in Wrath of the Lich King. So you're going to want to use Festering Strike and Scourge Strike to get your runes on cooldown, and then you're going to want to use Outbreak and clear any sort of Death Coil charges from Sudden Doom that you may have acquired to make sure that you don't waste them. The primary thing you need to consider in this case is that you do not overcap on runes, you do not overcap on blood charges from blood tap unless you are using one of the other 2 rune regen talents, and that you do not overcap on runic power in that order generally, because runes tend to be more powerful than runic power, and then blood charges can be converted directly into runes, and then the runic power is less damage per second overall. As far as the burst goes, that's pretty much it. You're going to want to, if possible, extend your diseases in either of the standard Necroblight rotation, where you use Unholy Blight to put up your diseases at the start, or in a sustained Necroblight situation, where you either use Unholy Blight or you use Plague Leech. If you are using Plague Leech instead of Unholy Blight, generally you will have to wait for Necroblight stacks to reach 15 before you're able to do your maximum potential AoE. And we'll explain a little bit as to how Necroblight works, or Necrotic Plague works, and how you're going to be spreading it with Blood Boil later. But the long and short of it is there are 2 modes to which the opener, burst, maintenance and extension, and refresh are going to be applying, and they both function slightly differently. In the sustained Necroblight, you are going to never allow Necrotic Plague to drop. In the normal Necroblight rotation, you can allow Necrotic Plague to drop because you can quickly reapply it with Unholy Blight. The advantage to using Plague Leech over Unholy Blight is that if you are going to be experiencing constant sustained AoE, you will be able to Plague Leech free runes. And because you are going to be primarily using Blood Boil, or there are going to be adds around, the Necrotic Plague should either, due to its primary function, it should either jump directly to the target that you have leeched off of, or your next Blood Boil should spread it back on. The other main difference between those 2 rotations is that in the Festerblight standard rotation, where you are reapplying with Unholy Blight, it is much easier to do single target burst, because you do not have to worry about desyncing your runes too much, because you can or turning them from death back to frost or blood, because you can refresh with Unholy Blight in a downtime phase. This would be the primary unholy rotation. The standard Necroblight would be something that you would use in a situation where you've got large periods of at least 10 seconds or so, where you can allow Necrotic Plague to drop and not have to worry about being required to do a large amount of AoE. In a fight like Zul'Arak Mythic, you are going to want to have a constant Necroblight available. Now, the choice as to which one of those you use is up to you on a fight-by-fight basis, dependent on your raids, DPS composition, how long the fight takes, how many ads are up. That said, I'm going to be showing two things here. I'm going to be showing the standard Necroblight rotation and how to spread it to a bunch of ads in this little training yard, as well as the modified Plague Leech sustained Necroblight in a little bit here. I may not have time to go through the opener for each one of these, but I'll do my best. The standard Necroblight is going to start off with Army of the Dead, Summon Gargoyle, and then Unholy Blight. I'm going to proceed with converting all of my runes into death runes. Normally, I wouldn't wait quite this long to do so, but I'm going to use this as an object lesson as to how easy it is to convert all of your runes to death runes at the start of fight. At that point, I'm going to extend my diseases for a little bit and then spread them around to everything in the training area and pop a draining strength potion, because once it comes off cooldown, because again, your diseases are snapshotting and updating dynamically, and they're going to do a lot of damage. Alright, well, here goes. Army of the Dead, 5 seconds before the pull. 3, 2, 1, pre-pot. Gargoyle, Unholy Blight. First set of runes. Extending. Now, I'm going to refresh using Blood Tap my first set of runes. I'm going to use Empower Rune Weapon to get all my runes back. And now I'm back in the situation where I can get my second Unholy Rune converted to death. Now I am 23 seconds into my fight. I have screwed up a little bit because I was paying too much attention to converting my runes and wasn't able to immediately empower my ghoul. That said, I am now at 86 seconds for my diseases, and I am ready to spread. Alright, now I'm going to spread all around to these different ads here. Blood Boil acts a little bit strange right now in that it spreads to everything that it hits, and it takes the duration of the longest disease, not the highest amount of stacks. Now I've just popped my Draining Strength potion. Oops, my ghoul just depowered, so I'm going to quickly get him back up. Normally you would want to try to sync up your ghoul's empowerment along with high burst. I'm assuming that I could not blood boil onto these ads for reasons, but I've still got my diseases ticking on all these ones over here. This one is still sustained. In a burst phase like this, I would usually want to be using Blood Boil, or in a single target scored situation, Scored Strike. In a AoE situation like this, where I can hit multiple ads, I would want to use Blood Boil almost exclusively. Now this is a perfect example of me correctly refreshing my ghoul right now with the existing tier 18 bonus, which allows you to get 2 stacks of the Unholy Empowerment for the price of 1, so to speak. So if you pool up 90 runic power prior to the point where you want to refresh, you're going to be able to easily get to refresh your ghoul the second that he drops. And that it's not even accounting for even a single sudden doom proc. Right there, I didn't get lucky. I was kind of relying on a sudden doom proc to show up and allow me to refresh really early. Now, at this point, my disease is falling off the other training dummies. I'm going to refresh around here. Now, you can spread to far targets by hitting both of them with Blood Boil. In this case, I am spreading my diseases and I'm spreading the long diseases by being between 2 different targets when I Blood Boil. Also keep in mind that occasionally Timmy will decide that he wants to be attacking something that he shouldn't be, so I personally have a macro set up to put him on defensive for a particular target. Now, I'm going to switch my target here, and because Timmy has been set to attack exclusively the boss dummy, I can go off and do whatever, and he is still going to be attacking the thing that I want dead. I could even stop and it would be fine. Now, the difficulty in maintaining a Necroblight rotation tends to boil down to synchronizing your bursts with when it's supposed to happen in a raid, as well as making sure that Timmy is empowered at the appropriate time, and I cannot talk and do things at the same time. Right now I've been extending Necroblight, or Necrotic Plague, as well as occasionally doing Burst AoE, and I'm sustaining somewhere in the range of 2 million damage on these little low-level training dummies. That's not that is significantly higher than I would be maintaining in a raid situation, but I have cheerfully sat at more than 400k sustained AoE in this current environment on pulls where there is a bunch of ads just running around, like in the Trash Before Tyrant. That said, this is pretty much everything there is to the extended AoE rotation or the standard Necroblight rotation. Both of them tend to function the same way. The only difference is that if I were taking Plague Leech, I would be able to very easily grab diseases off of any of these targets. Now, I've switched my talents out, despite the fact that I've got long diseases up, so I'm going to demonstrate how this works. I'm also going to put Timmy back on aggressive, or not on passive. You put him on defensive and then stop attacking something and got out of combat and he stopped attacking. Now I've got long diseases, 78 seconds, 75 seconds on multiple targets. I'm going to clear out my runes, and then I'm going to spread to everything, and then I'm going to yank. Well, I'm going to spread twice more here. Re-up Timmy first, and then once I've got my diseases cleared out and I spread once, I'm going to grab diseases back off there. Now, you see what I just did? I used Plague Leech to pretty much just get 2 free death runes. And because of the way the DK runes regen, I was able to get a much longer duration disease, and that could have easily been switched for 2 extra blood boils on a large number of targets. It's an extremely powerful tool, but the downside to this is that if you accidentally pull it off the only target that you've got Necrotic Plague up, you are going to be out of luck, because you're going to have no way of easily refreshing your diseases. Now, I am at over 100 seconds with these diseases due to the use of 2 Plague Leeches. And I've really not been paying attention to gargoyle use or using my ring at all. That's because the ring generally doesn't have as much bearing on the Necroblight play rotation as it does on the Breath of Syndragosa or Defile rotation. Defile to a much lesser degree. Necroblight, it's still important, but it's not make or break. You're still going to be able to put out some decent numbers without it. Now I'm going to let all my diseases fall off and switch back to Unholy Blight so that I can kind of demonstrate how the Unholy Blight refresh goes in an ideal situation. I'm also going to clear out all my runes because I've got a full set of nothing but death runes, and that's going to make any sort of rotation for me extraordinarily easy and pretty much trivial. Now, in a regular Necroblight rotation, you're going to want to pay a lot more attention to Hungering Blows, especially if you're using this particular trinket combination than I am, because the Unending Hunger trinket is very powerful for any sort of burst, and lining up your burst with Unending Hunger is pretty much crucial. Now I'm going to just ignore all of these over here, so you can pretty much ignore my DPS for this, and I'm just going to do a standard Necroblight rotation on this left training dummy Scully over here. I'm going to focus exclusively on burst, which is really not going to reflect that well because I'm doing a lot of damage with this, but I'm going to focus exclusively on burst and try to extend the bare minimum that I am able to continue the length, the full duration, full stacked Necrotic Plague until I have Unholy Blight off cooldown and ready to AoE. Alright, assuming this is another fight and I had Army of the Dead off cooldown, I would pop my Dranic Strength Potion, summon Gargoyle on the target, Unholy Blight as I'm coming in. Went a little bit out of order there. I should have hit Festering Strike and Scourge Strike, but I'm getting a little bit tired first. Now I do pretty much the same thing, except now I burst. Now I'm assuming that in any sort of raid situation, you would probably see your ring pop much sooner than this. But there's no way that I'm going to make any sort of assumptions for where you're coming from here. Now, if you're paying attention to the time for Unholy Blight as well as the time I have left on my Necrotic Plague, I am now at the point where I would really want to extend. I have Hungering Blows is still going, which it can do that, so I'm going to continue my burst a little bit longer, and now it just dropped. I didn't notice that it was originally extending that long, so otherwise I would have extended first. I'm going to pop Empower Rune Weapon now that I had everything decharged, and I'm going to switch to... actually, I don't even need to. I now have the cooldown for both Unholy Blight and the remaining duration left on my Necrotic Plague is now lining up. So I am going to extend a little bit longer because I estimated a little bit off. Normally you would want to try to get as close to you want to let it drop off, and you want to get as close to a perfect drop off point. In other words, you're not allowing any sort of rune wastage or strange combinations of runes going on as you're refreshing it. And you also do not want to refresh when you have potential AoE. If you're in a situation where you could let your diseases drop off and refresh, or you could save the long duration for an AoE, you want to AoE. And you generally do not want to have your diseases last that much longer than the ads are going to be up for, especially if you've got a Festering or a Unholy Plague ready in the wings to allow you to pretty much instantly get additional duration on your your Necrotic Plague. As it is, that's pretty much everything you need to know about the Necrotic Plague playstyle. A little bit longer demonstration than I had anticipated, and as soon as I get a little bit better with video editing software, I might cut this up into pieces. But that's pretty much the Necrotic Plague, or the Necroblight rotation and playstyle in a nutshell. 2 different forms: standard Necroblight with Unholy Blight, and then a sustained Necroblight with Plague Leech. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial, and everybody have fun.